Hello everyone and welcome back to more Magic the Gathering lore. Today we continue discussing the various Plainswalkers featured in MGT storylines, and Sorin Markov's story brings us nearly to the beginning of it all. Sorin Markov is a vampire Plainswalker who is a talented blood mage, practicing in Synchromancy. He is one of the oldest living Plainswalkers, which makes him one of the most traveled beings in all the multiverse, visiting hundreds of different planes over his lifetime. Eternal life can lead to boredom, so Sorin has dedicated his life to seeking out new ways to satisfy his hedonistic and curious personality. Sorin's story began thousands of years ago in the small village of Stensnia, on a plane known as Innistrad. This plane has always been one of darkness and shadow, and at this time in Sorin's life, Innistrad was suffering from a famine. Food was scarce and a solution needed to be found. This puzzle fell on Edgar Markov to solve. Edgar was an alchemist who had no issue with pushing the boundaries of alchemy into unknown and dangerous territory. He made contact with a demon by the name of Schillinger, who taught Edgar the secrets of Synchromancy. Edgar attempted a blood ritual with his newly learned skills, which granted him an ageless body, but with the need to subsist on blood. Edgar became the first vampire on the plane of Innistrad. Counting his experiment a complete success, Edgar had forgotten the very reason he made a deal with the demon. It was to help to protect the people from the famine. Those he sought to protect did not believe living off the blood of others was any sort of life at all, and rejected his solution, even his grandson, Sorin Markov. Edgar did not take this rejection with grace. He forcefully bestowed Sorin with the vampiric curse. Sorin's transformation took a substantial toll on his body, and the stress of the transformation ignited his Plainswalker spark. Sorin wandered his home plane for some time, feeding as he traveled. Not knowing what would become of his victims, Sorin unknowingly created a legion of fellow vampires who also needed to subsist on human blood. Eventually, Innistrad became too boring for Sorin, and he planeswalked all over the multiverse. He made friends and enemies on his travels, and he also made terrible discoveries, the worst of all being the unveiling of the Eldrazi. The Eldrazi are creatures of pure aether, who jump from plane to plane consuming mana as a food and energy source. Sorin witnessed these beings swarm an entire plane and drain its very essence until it was nothing but barren wastelands. Acting either altruistically or out of self-interest, Sorin knew he had to stop these creatures. Sorin found allies in two other Plainswalkers who saw the Eldrazi as threats, and they came up with a plan. Sorin was going to direct the swarm through the blind eternities to a plane with lush amounts of unstable mana. This bait plane would be Zendikar. After arriving on Zendikar, Sorin's first ally, an unknown Plainswalker with the ability to manipulate crystallizing energy, would force the Eldrazi to take a physical form, so that they could be killed. The Lithomancer succeeded in encasing the ether-born creatures in shells, but the plan started to fall apart. Sorin was then supposed to drain the creatures' life essence, weakening them for his second ally, a Plainswalker named Ujin. Ujin was capable of using colorless mana, the same type of mana which made up the Eldrazi. In theory, this could kill the creatures, but the Eldrazi were just too powerful, and the attacks failed to harm the large broodmothers. Knowing their plan had failed, Sorin quickly changed tactics and decided to imprison the creatures in lieu to killing them. The Lithomancer quickly designed a vault, and with a powerful colorless flame, Ujin sealed the Eldrazi in a cavern beneath the mountain of Akum. The Eldrazi found that they could leave their prison etherly, but not physically, meaning they began to feed off Zendikar's mana-rich environments, but were unable to physically leave the plane. Knowing Zendikar was most likely lost to the swarm, but satisfied in that they could not leave the plane, the three Plainswalkers departed and agreed that they would meet again should they ever feel the ritual was disturbed. Every so often, Sorin would make a return trip to Zendikar after feeling the seal begin to weaken. He re-establishes the enchantment, which momentarily delays the consumption of Zendikar, but he knows the plane is forever doomed, for the sake of the entire multiverse. While Sorin was out jumping planes, his home of Innistrad began to deteriorate. The race of vampires in which he created were spreading further into human lands. They started to become disdainful of the race in which they spawned, and began hunting mortal humans more boldly. Sorin could see this change happening on his home, and knew that if his fellow vampires did not stop their bloodlust against the humans, they would become extinct. The vampires saw no problem with this, and in fact, they wanted to end the existence of humans on their world. But Sorin could see what many of his brethren could not, that if the humans were removed entirely, the vampires would lose their food source. Having nothing to feed on would lead the vampires to one conclusion: cannibalism, and the eventual end of all vampires on Innistrad. In order for humanity to survive and thus saving the vampires from themselves, Sorin, in the eyes of his fellow vampires, betrayed his own race. Using his immense power and magical abilities, he created a warrior who would protect the humans of Innistrad while Sorin was away. This warrior's name is Avacyn. The humans saw this angel as a religious figure, and with their faith came a great power. Avacyn used the magic of faith to create a true power which could fend off all the darkness which threatened humanity. With the threat to Innistrad corrected, Sorin started to planeswalk once again. Many years had passed, and Sorin felt the seal of the Eldrazi prison begin to slip. To Sorin's surprise, the other two planeswalkers who aided him many years ago did not make the return trip to Zendikar. Unbeknownst to him, Ugin had been captured and tortured by the ancient dragon planeswalker Nicol Bolas. Ugin gave up valuable information pertaining to the vault and how to free the Eldrazi captives. Using this information, Nicol Bolas fabricated a scenario which would cause the prison seal to be shattered. The key to the prison was in its very creation. To be unlocked, there would need to be the presence of 3 Plainswalker sparks, along with the colorless fire spell, which would break the enchantment. A situation which occurred when Nicol Bolas' plan came to fruition, and the Eldrazi were freed by Sarkhan Vol, Chandra Nalaar, and Jace Beleren. Sorin reached Zendikar. Realizing he was on his own, he immediately went into action. He suddenly found himself an ally in Nissa Rivain, an elfin planeswalker and native of Zendikar. Soon the pair were attacked by a group of Eldrazi broodlings, who were easily dispatched by Sorin's magic. The Eldrazi had a prisoner with them, however, the guide to the Eye of Ugin, the vampire known as Anawan. The planeswalkers freed the slave and went off together to find the Eye of Ugin and attempted to stop the flow of Eldrazi. The group found their way to the edge of a great ocean which blocked them from the foot of Akum. Nissa summoned a huge behemoth to pull their ship across the sea, but was halted by the treacherous shores beneath the mountain. The bays of Akum were protected by a great kraken, named Bain Lin, who ruled those waters. The kraken demanded to know the nature of their travel, and Sorin told it what he had told the others. But the kraken knew it was not the full truth and demanded that Sorin reveal everything. He had not told Nissa that Zendikar was slowly being destroyed by the Eldrazi from the inside out, and attempted to hide this fact in fear that he would lose her aid. He could not hide the truth any longer, and the true purpose of their journey came to light. They were to sacrifice Zendikar to the Eldrazi in order to save the multiverse. Nissa was distraught by this revelation, but kept her emotions inside. The group finally made their way to the Eye of Ugin, which was covered in Eldrazi broodlings. The group cut through as many as they could until they finally reached the inner sanctum where the prison seal was located. Sorin began to reinforce the spell containing the Eldrazi. He looked to Nissa for help, but he would get none. Nissa did not plan to lose her plane to the Eldrazi and went against Sorin's instructions. She shattered the main Hedron which was imprisoning the Titans of the Eldrazi, freeing them fully. Nissa expected that the Eldrazi and their Titans would flee Zendikar after finally being freed. But this was not the case. The plane was lost and the entire multiverse was in danger. No longer having any ability to stop the Eldrazi swarm or their Titans, Sorin washed his hands of Zendikar and planeswalked away. Sorin returned to the only place he could think of at that time, his home on the plane of Innistrad, but what he found shocked him. His world was darker than ever, and humanity was pushed to the edge of extinction. Confused by this, Sorin looked for his hope made flesh, his guardian which was to prevent these events from occurring, but Avacyn was nowhere to be found. He had no leads on the disappearance of his angel, but that did not stop his determination to find her.
My bonds have compelled me back to Markov Manor. Painfully, it's clear this land is not as I'd left it. Thraben's wall has been breached. The balance I strove to perfect has been upset. My ravenous brethren cannot see the greater good. And once again, they wreak havoc, their hunger knowing no bounds. Humanity fights valiantly, but they are losing ground. Some go mad. Others, sensing the inevitable, give themselves freely. And once the shadows claim the last of them, my kind shall turn on itself. Where is she whom I created, my guardian of order? Avacyn, my angel, what has befallen you? I will find you, and those who block me will answer to my sword.
While investigating this matter, an even darker threat appeared on Innistrad. The fiend-blooded planeswalker known as Tibalt. Sorin realized that Avacyn's disappearance was a great threat to Innistrad, but found that this young anarchist planeswalker proved an even greater threat. Tibalt opposed every installation which Sorin had created to provide a balance to this plane, and this made him a problem which had to be dealt with immediately. Tibalt loved nothing more than to create pain and suffering in mortal beings, so he was angered when he found that Sorin had placed protective measures on the humans of Innistrad, preventing the fun of the dark creatures who enjoyed them so. This caused the two planeswalkers to clash, which resulted in Tibalt's death. With this threat neutralized, Sorin proceeded to search for his angel. This would not be a long search, however, for events occurred which freed Avacyn and restored the balance to Innistrad. With no further obligations on his plane, Sorin began to travel the multiverse once more. The events which occurred on Innistrad that freed Avacyn, unbeknownst to Sorin, are very interesting stories indeed. Stories I'd like to bring you in another video on its own. Sorin Markov has always been one of my personal favorite characters in the MTG universe. I mean, he just bleeds coolness. Despite being insanely cool, many people are unaware of how influential a character he is in some stories. Many only know him for his story on Innistrad, which was awesome, don't get me wrong, but he has also done so much more. Since Sorin was prominently mentioned in a relatively recent story, I doubt he will see much action in the near future. If he does make a reappearance, I would predict it would be in some kind of return to Zendikar block. His story is so strongly linked to Zendikar and to the Eldrazi, so if we were to revisit the topics, I'm sure Sorin would be involved. Thank you all again for watching. If you want to know more about a particular character or event from Magic the Gathering, leave a topic suggestion in the comments. If you enjoyed these videos, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.